Hello and welcome back to another episode of Graphic Novelties. Today we are talking about a Marvel comic, because I'm not just a DC Andy. In fact, I've read plenty of Marvel comics in my time. I'm just in more of a DC phase of my life right now. But Daredevil is next to Spider-Man for my favourite Marvel character. That's right, I'm a normie. My first exposure to Daredevil as a character was through the Netflix show. I watched season 1 when it came out, season 2 when it came out, season 3 when it came out, and I recently rewatched all of them as well, in preparation for the Disney Plus Born Again show, which I also quite enjoyed. Sometime after I watched the Netflix show, probably around the time I first got Marvel Unlimited, I read through what I normally just say is like the volume 2 run of Daredevil, because I didn't just restrict myself to Brian Michael Bendis, but what's most important is that I read the Brian Michael Bendis run of the early 2000s, and I loved it so much. It's still probably one of my favourite runs of comics I've ever read, although now that I've got a few more under my belt, I would be interested to revisit that sometime and see if that's still true, but I know it's very highly regarded, so yeah, it probably is. And all the time when I was reading these comics, because they include like the fan write-in letters and stuff, I kept hearing about the original Frank Miller run, the iconic Frank Miller Born Again run, and I think he's also done a book called Man Without Fear as well. And that was what Brian Michael Bendis was, in his eyes, trying to live up to in his run. I've heard that this book is probably one of the most important establishing stories for the character ever, and took him in a bit of a darker, grittier direction, if you can believe that, of Frank Miller's writing. That's right, I've read The Dark Knight Returns, I've read Batman Year One, I love those books. And so when I was looking to try out Marvel's Premier Collection books in answer to the DC Compact Comics, I decided my first one would be Daredevil Born Again, because that would be a good way both to like get this iconic story and own it and read it, but also it's always nice to own some older comics as well, physically. I don't know why, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, I don't only want to own the new stuff. And yeah, I had a really good time with Born Again, but I have a lot to say about it. It was a really good book. I really liked it, had a great time reading it, it was pretty gripping. But at the same time, it wasn't entirely what I expected, and I didn't enjoy it quite as much as I expected to either. And maybe that's just because I've already consumed so much Daredevil media that takes inspiration from this story and this era of the comics. So some of this stuff I'm kind of already expecting or have seen before, and then some of it shakes out differently to how I'm expecting. Like, one thing I will say, and maybe it's controversial to say that an adaptation of this story is better than the original, especially when the original is so well regarded, but I do prefer the way the Netflix show handled the Sister Maggie revelation. Like, I think my problem is, because I love the Netflix show so much, and the Disney Plus show is pretty good too, I think my problem is that I've seen stories which take this source material and build upon it. So now to go back and read the source material, it almost feels a little bit more bare bones than I was expecting. But don't let that distract from the fact that I still think this is a fantastic story. So for anyone who doesn't know, Daredevil Born Again is the story of Kingpin finding out Matt Murdock's secret identity and ruining his life systematically in every aspect of his life. Over the course of several months, he has him framed and disbarred as a lawyer, he blows up his home, he has him hunted, all this stuff. And we see Matt Murdock having to deal with this situation, and he is not in a great state of mind. We also see how Matt Murdock's state of mind and his life exploding affects the people that he loves. We see how Foggy reacts to it. We see Karen's guilt for the hand that she had in it. One of my favourite aspects of this story is that we see Matt's girlfriend kind of like realize that they're done, basically, and grow closer to Foggy in a way that actually felt really natural. And we also see maybe some of the strongest parts of this story. We see Ben Urich, because he knows Matt's secret identity and he understands what's happening to him, and so he sets out to try and prove it, or at least prove that Matt Murdock has been framed for all the illegal lawyering stuff that he has been accused of. And we see the ramifications of going to bat for public enemy number one here, or I guess Wilson Fisk enemy number one. I think my favourite part of this story, and we'll start talking about story specifics now, so potential spoilers here, but my favourite part part is when he gets caught trying to track down someone who basically lied on the stand to help frame Matt Murdock. And someone who's working for Kingpin walks up to Ben Urich and starts breaking his fingers and says, if you so much as mention the name Matt Murdock, we will break more. And so this spooks Ben Urich as it would spook anyone, and we see his internal monologue, and he's going, don't even think the name, do not even think the name. And we see that when he's back at the Daily Bugle, he asks to be put on like fluff pieces and stuff, and J. Jonah Jameson is like, true reporters don't get scared off of stories. Go out there and do your job. I'm J. Jonah Jameson. Which is a fun reminder, by the way, that for all of his flaws, J. Jonah Jameson really cares about reporting. And he is on board to try and take down Kingpin, which is very fun. But anyway, the guy who he went to interview ends up calling Ben Urich, asking for his help. But as he does, one of Kingpin's henchmen catches up to him and strangles him to death. And she realizes Ben Urich's on the phone, and she's like, I want you to listen. And he does. And we just see like his... Oh, so good, by the way, how David Mazzucchelli draws this scene, because you can just see Ben Urich, like, the soul leaving his body as he realizes what he's listening to, and the part that he's inadvertently played in it, all the responsibility he has regarding what's happening. And we see that horror grow into an anger and a rage, and I fucking love... He sits down on a bench in Central Park, and he looks up, and he says... Matt Murdock. Oh, so good. And yeah, then we see events escalate as Kingpin, frustrated at his continued failed attempts to kill Matthew Murdock after systematically ruining his life, ends up hiring a man named Nuke, or a man who goes by the name Nuke, who is a nationalist kind of terrorist, and we see him going into various parts of the world to liberate prisoners of war, and he's chanting, our boys, our boys, our boys, our boys. I'm not gonna lie, that cast my mind forward to the whole Proud Boys stuff in recent American history. So I would really like to see them adapt Nuke into the Disney Plus show and not pull any punches, because this is a very stark depiction of someone who is a horrible, murdering person who allows their nationalistic fervor to fuel their horrible tendencies. And I think it's important to hold those kind of villains up as, like, we need to not stoke this in people. I will say, having the last villain of this story be Nuke, and sending him after Matt Murdock, it's great for... the scope of destruction he causes, and how the Avengers end up getting involved, and Captain America ends up being a character in the last few issues. But I will say it does feel a little bit like an outside thing that's been pulled into this story. It doesn't necessarily link into Matt Murdock's personal story. It's not like... it's not like Bullseye is the person who's been hired, and I was fully expecting it to be Bullseye. This story doesn't feel quite as neatly wrapped, and you can just go and read this individual book by itself without knowing anything else, as maybe some of the DC Compact comics I've read do. I definitely got a sense of, if I'd known a little bit about the run leading up to this point, and... also, I would like to see maybe a few issues after this to see the aftermath of some of this stuff. I kind of felt that, and it did hinder my experience just a little bit. And actually included in this book is a issue that took place not too long before the Born Again run, in which Frank Miller wrote a little story regarding Gladiator, also known as, what's-his-face? Potter, the guy who makes the Daredevil suit, both in the book and the show. And that was really good, and I actually think they should have put this at the front of the book. Like, they can put a disclaimer being like, this isn't the Born Again story yet, this is just something that takes place a few issues earlier, because it does, and I think it would have worked a lot better at the front of the book if I'd read it sooner, because it also kind of begins to set up Foggy and, I don't know her name, Glory's relationship. Now, I did mention that this was my first Marvel Premiere Collection edition, so let's talk about that a little bit. I do already have a short out on the channel where I compare it to DC Compact Comics, but let's just focus on this. Something I didn't mention about Short is I don't love the overall presentation style of the cover. So whereas I just said I wasn't going to compare it, but sod it. Whereas compact comics are black and blue a lot of the time, or maybe not black and blue, but you know what I mean. Like the banner at the top is dark, and then you've got the blue DC logo. Marvel's very much more of a white and red color scheme. Again, that's helped in part with this book, with Daredevil being red and so on and so forth. But yeah, just personal taste. I prefer the other color scheme, but yeah, it's a nice book. Obviously, you will see people talk about how they're more expensive than compact comics. I just can't get away from the comparisons, can I? But it is a nice little book. The colors really pop. The paper is quite nice quality as well compared to alternatives, and yeah, it was a nice way to read this. And also in this, you get some bonuses. So at the front, you get a foreword from Charlie Cox, and you get an introduction by Frank Miller, the man himself. In the back, you get some behind the scenes kind of like, you know, illustrations, and you can see how like they block out like the parts for the dialogue to go. You also get, if I can find it, some script work, and there's also a little cover gallery at the back, which I'm not going to be able to flip to. There we go. Which is really nice to see as well. And yeah, it's a really nice little book. I'm definitely going to be buying more Premier Collection editions in the future. Hopefully some of them will have a little bit more content than this, because this one was a little sparse, but I have heard that some of them have more content. But yeah, the art as well. I like to point out the art in these sections, don't I? The art was quite nice. Again, I really liked how the colors popped and everything. I wouldn't say that there's anything in particular that stood out in terms of just really gorgeous pages, but let me see if I can find. But like, this is a nice page, for example, when you see Matt Murdock finally embrace Karen. He reaches her, and obviously this is just like such a nice image of people who obviously have a lot of history, and are just reuniting for the first time in ages. And yeah, you also see those panels of Ben Urich realizing what he's listening to, and just the sheer horror as he realizes what's happening. That's very well done as well. But yeah, ultimately this is a great story. I'm really glad I own it and read it myself, like someone else would read it to me. What? I have heard that some people prefer Frank Miller's Man Without Fear book, which might be a little bit more self-contained, because I believe it is a limited series. I really hope they release that as a Marvel Premier Collection edition at some point, because I would happily pick that up too. I could just read it on Marvel Unlimited, but I'm getting more and more physical in my comic reading habits recently, so I don't know, I might hold out. But thanks for checking this out. Let me know if there are any Daredevil runs that I need to read, because I did try to continue Daredevil after the Brian Michael Bendis run and the Shadowland event, which I wasn't that keen on, and I just couldn't get into it. I don't know who it was who wrote him afterwards. Was it Mark Waid or something? But I couldn't really get into it, so if there's like a really good run ahead of that I should skip to, let me know, or before Brian and Michael Bendis as well. Just throw some good Daredevil at me, and I'll take it into consideration. But up next, I will be reading Batman The Long Halloween. I hope to get that review out to you by Halloween. I actually recorded this on the 11th of October and then scheduled it. That's right, I'm being professional about this, so I'm giving myself more time to read this chonker of a story, and hopefully, yeah, I can get that to you in time for Halloween itself. So yeah, thanks for checking this video out, and I will catch you in whatever I make next.